Okay, we're back. We're live. It's here on a given Tuesday at 1 o'clock. We're here with Christine Camp of Avalon Group, and she is a player. She is a member of our panel in the Offshore Investment in Hawaii program. Offshore Investment in Hawaii, how can we better manage it? At the Downtown Forum on Thursday, April 16th at the Laniakea. Welcome to the show, Christine.
Thank you, Jay.
So what do you think? What about offshore investment in Hawaii? Have any thoughts about that? We have to, figure out what people really need to hear on this subject, and then we have to actually find action points that will help the community in some way.
Well, there's various forms of offshore investments, right? When we say offshore now, we're talking about mainland investments. Money's coming in from the mainland outside of Hawaii, in addition to foreign investments. And there are various factors. There's a lot of money coming into real estate. There's money coming in the retail fronts, new employers buying or creating new companies here or new platforms. And then, of course, there's a banking, new banking coming in to compete with the other bankers. And what do you know? You got Nextera coming in to acquire Hawaiian Electric. So those are all various forms of offshore investments in Hawaii. They have huge impacts. Some maybe not as big when you have a Chinese or Japanese investor buying a high-end condo. It may be a smaller impact. But when it comes to real estate developments or Nextera, for example, huge impacts for us because it defines how we live here. Real estate development is very impactful. It's long-lasting. It changes our behaviors. It changes where we live and how we live. Nextera is very impactful because it's going to control our one source of energy at this point. It's still the predominant source, which is electricity. Very few people are off-grid. If you were Hank Rogers, you might be off-grid completely because you could afford to. But for the rest of us, we'll have to see how that pans out. So it is impactful. People might say, well, we need to legislate. I am of the belief that legislation doesn't solve everything. In fact, it may hinder our abilities to control our own destinies. But we need to make sure that our leaders, people who are doing businesses with offshore investors, that we can help them define how to do business. And as a developer myself, where I'm working, most of my investors, big monies, come from outside of Hawaii. I have investors from Chicago, and I have investors from Korea. But the Chicago investors, their funds are coming from Saudi Arabia and pension funds from all over the country, so it's not really Chicago specific.
Yeah, how interesting, yeah, so
right.
a two-step.
Two-step pronged. And Hanwha, who I work with in Korea, they're conglomerate doing business in all over the world, including Iraq and Saudi Arabia and China and various places. So Hawaii is just a small step for them. So it's really, there's a huge responsibility for people like myself to make sure that they understand what it's like to do business in Hawaii, how to care for our environment, our community. And so I challenge everyone who do work with offshore investors to ensure that your voice is resonated.
Okay, that's just to put a cap on that. This is Offshore Investment in Hawaii. How can we better manage it? At the Downtown Forum, Thursday, April 16th, just next week. And Christine Camp is just one of 7 speakers we have. So try to go. This will be very interesting, not only to find out how you're touched by investment, but how investment, as she says, shapes our state. It has shaped it, it is shaping it, and it certainly will shape it. And our job is to try to get involved in that process so it doesn't happen without our input. So let me go through the, if you want to go, thinktechhawaii.com, you can sign up. And we have a new thing called Bring a Friend. That way, if you bring a friend, you get a big discount. Anyway, I want to go through the speakers that we have and just see who your compadres are on this panel. Paul Brewbaker, we have to have an accountant, or rather an economist. If we're talking about offshore investments. So Paul Brewbaker is with TZ Economics, used to be the economist for Bank of Hawaii for many years. And I'm not sure exactly what any of these guys are going to talk about, but what we think he might talk about is the relevance of offshore investment to the economy. How important is it? How much have we been getting? Is it enough? What do we need to expand the economy? How do we compare against other states? What can offshore investment do in the ideal for quality of life, for retaining our kids here, building the future? And what happens if we don't get it? What happens if it dries up? What happens if all those money sources get mad at us for some reason? Some of them already are mad at us. And how do we get it? What are the techniques for the community, including Christine and Avalon, for getting money? How do you do that? It's not easy. I'd like to know more from you about that, Christine. Who has to do what? If we want to find an ideal, we have targets for energy, we have targets for, how many kilowatts and whatnot, and how much, natural clean energy is going to come into the state. But we don't have targets for investment. We should have targets for investment. We should go after those. Why do I feel that Lee Kuan Yew had targets for investment? Yeah?
He may have. I don't know. I mean, I think targets are arbitrary.
Oh, yeah.
It really has to do with what's needed in the economy. I mean, everyone says, well, things are changing and offshore investments are controlling our state and our economy. But you have to realize what happens when they don't come, right? We had our downturns in 2003, it down cycle, and they went up again. In 2008, there was a down cycle. What happened to our jobs? These monies are coming into our community. Maybe the profits are being siphoned to the offshore area, other places. But in Hawaii, payroll is being paid.
Right.
GT is being paid.
Right.
Contracts are done here.
Income taxes.
Income taxes. You've got a whole array of monies coming into this state, and it's important. I don't think there should be a cap. I think it really has to do with the definition of how we grow and where they fit into that picture, because we can't afford it. We can't do it alone in this state with the monies that we have.
So how would you go and get more? Let's say that we decided, I mean, who's to say, so anybody's opinion, but if we said we're only getting half of what we should get, and we'd be doing a lot better if we had the other half, or more, anyway. How do we get it? It's a matter of, I remember Linda Lingle used to talk about, she's going to pick up the phone one morning, early in the morning, and she's going to call a big company, a big pharma company, that's the one she referred to, every morning and catch them during the business day on the mainland and say, why don't you come out here? I'll make it worth your while to come out here. I don't think she did that, but it was a great idea. I mean, do we have somebody on the phone like that? How do you get offshore investment?
I think it's defined by need. For my industry, which is in real estate, it's defined by there's a project that should be developed, create communities, and we need monies. We were able to raise $100 million for our project. It took us a year, and we tried locally, and it just wasn't available for us. And we went offshore, went to the mainland banks, and they were able to make the loan happen. Same thing with when we acquired 177 acres of our industrial park. We went offshore because that's where the monies were. The local monies were too conservative, or maybe couldn't see the bigger picture and wasn't able to raise that kind of fund. So over $180 million were raised over the last year.
What did you do for lunch?
My $5 zip pack. Yeah, so, and it's a lot of selling Hawaii, how wonderful it is. And
what do you tell them, though? I mean, say you got them on the phone. Say you're somebody like Linda Lingle, you got them on the phone, except they're in Asia, so you have to call in the afternoon. What do you tell them about Hawaii?
Hawaii's population growth is nominal, but we have a tourism economy. No matter how anyone looks at tourism, tourism is what drives our industry in the way I look at it. And our government, our federal government spends a considerable amount of monies here. Mm-hmm. The military spending and the the tourism spending is phenomenal, and we've had a phenomenal growth here. And so the growth story resonates well in the mainland. So the investments here for supporting that growth industry is very compelling.
What about returns? I mean, can we say that the returns they're going to make here are better than elsewhere? I'm sure they want to know.
It really isn't that. It's not about the returns being more than here. I think what it is that there's a defined amount of resources that are available in Hawaii. So when you control that defined resource, the risks are minimized. So when you own a piece of land in Texas, very easy to do business, very easy to get permitted, you can always buy more land and then grow and larger, but that means there's always going to be more land available, and so the land values don't go up. The investment is not sound in the sense that, you have to know what's going on around you. In Hawaii, 3% of our entire land mass is urban. And of that 3%, the concentration of ownership, where it's not individual owners, but it's the trust, the state, the federal government, and what have you, it makes up for about 30 to 40% of that. That leaves us with 60% of the 3% of our land mass available for development. That makes a very compelling case.
Yeah. Let's take a moment and talk about Kaka'ako, since you mentioned urban land. Kaka'ako is special, isn't it? I mean, it's special historically. It's special because of where it is. It's special because of the fact that it's a Carta Blanca. It hasn't been developed all this time. And now here we are with, extraordinary interest, not only in developers, but investors, not only, buyers of these condo units. I mean, wow, it's like everybody in the world found the place, and it's all within the last year or two. It's incredible. What do you think of Kaka'ako as a place for investment, as a place for the perfect planning of a large area that hasn't been planned in the center of the city?
It's so funny when people say it's been discovered in the last 2 to 3 years. Kaka'ako was waiting for this to happen since the 60s.
I agree.
It was founded to be a growth center. It was founded to be a place where you would have high rises. In fact, there were supposed to be far more high rises than where it is now. So it's only being actualized now. And people are responding to it because they got so used to it being kind of a sleepy little town. Again, compelling fact, 3% of urban land available for the rest of us. 1.2 million population. Where are we going to live? We need to build places for us to live. And so people are right now responding, saying, well, but they're all being built for high end. Well, they're being built for high end, but when you have more supply, there's always, what happens is that the existing supply of the older condos and older homes become more readily available and affordable. Mm-hmm. So new supply always helps with that, with the transition. You're moving people up, right, to the other, and therefore, those people who are moving up are now leaving the smaller places or maybe the older places for others to move into. Yeah. So to me, I think the increasing of the supply is a good thing.
Well, there was piece in the paper, was it today or yesterday maybe, about, we need, and this is not news.
Right.
So much we think is news is not news, about how we need lots more housing and we're not getting enough housing and we really have to work on that. And actually, when you talk about investment and infrastructure, it's the most important thing of all, isn't it? Otherwise, we're going to be climbing on each other and the quality of life goes down. And they leave because they can't find housing they can afford, So you're in the right business, Christine.
Oh, it's a very risky business and long-term in coming. People talk about developers making all this money, but what they don't see is the 10 to 15 years of work that they have to do to get land entitled. Look at Ho'opili for what's happening. It was always meant to be housing, and there's been the issue of trying to make that into housing. They're still going through their zoning process. Koa Ridge was supposed to be for housing. Waiava was supposed to be for housing. And all those places that were designated for housing, and they're having such a hard time building the housing units. Where are they going to go? So to me, Kaka'ako is right for that growth, to move people.
What did I see in The Economist? They talk about the major cities in the world and how permitting delays add, increased pricing, increased elements in price. I mean, and sometimes it's as much as 8 times the original, pre-permitting cost, and it's extraordinary how it twists price, and it happens here too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it happens. Why do you think our housing is so expensive? In the 70s, when you bought housing, it wasn't 10 times your earnings on these prices. They were appropriately priced because it didn't cost a lot of time. So it's not just the hard cost of building something today that took 10 years to get to. It's the risk. So an outside investor comes in and says, I just need to annualize and I need a 15% return. Seems reasonable, 15% return for their money, but it's an annualized return. So if it takes 10 years, that 15% grows into a huge compounded growth. They need to pull that out for all the risks that they've taken. Sure. And so our homes are much
way
more expensive.
and we wind up
That's
paying
right.
for that delay.
Well, D.R. Horton is not a local company, but they've been here. They've been with us, and they've been working with us because they have good stewards at their helm, understanding our community, and they've been trying to be good citizens. And it's even being a good citizen is taking 15 years and Supreme Court challenges, and so yeah, I think we do it to ourselves.
Well, I want to be a good video citizen, so I'm going to take a short break. That's Christine Camp, Avalon Group. It's a real estate developer. Here on Community Matters, we're talking about offshore investment in Hawaii. How can we better manage it? And it's the subject of our downtown forum on Thursday, April 16th. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on the ThinkTech digital series. The show is every Wednesday from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and I want you to watch this show because I think that when we talk with artists on the show about what they do, how they do it, and most importantly, why they do it, I believe that it resonates within each of us, and we find something inside of ourselves that brings us closer to all of humanity. That's what arts are there to do, and that's what I'm here to do on this show. That's Center Stage. It's on every Wednesday from 2 to 3 o'clock. I hope to see you there.
Hi, aloha. My name is Chris Leatham, and I host a show called The Economy and You. The show plays every Wednesday at noon, and on my show, I bring on guests who are interested or working in the technology space. And so I'd like you to come and watch the show and learn with me about all the sort of exciting things that we're doing in Hawaii to build and grow our economy ecosystem. So I'd like to say aloha, and I look forward to seeing you on the show. Thank you.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Christine Camp of Avalon Group, a local developer, here on Community Matters, talking about offshore investment in Hawaii. And we're talking about our program on Thursday, April 16th, in which she is one of 7 speakers. So the next speaker I want to mention is Gerard Sumida, the lawyer with Carl Smith Ball. He's going to talk about, we hope he's going to talk, I don't know what he's going to talk about, but maybe he'll talk about regulating big investors. You know, a comparison of investment in regulated and unregulated industries makes a big difference. Should we be doing more or less regulation of offshore investments? Should we be creating conditions to deals? Can we do that? What is an acceptable condition? How far can we go legally? How about regulating new entities? How much confidence should we have in our regulators? Sometimes I don't think we have any confidence in them. What do we need to do to properly empower our regulators? And what do we do about federal regulators? Does that help here? Does it help locally? What should we do to, influence them? What have we learned from failed investments? We got a few of those. I can talk about those. Super Ferry, Big Wind is another example. The undersea cable, geothermal, it's, stuck in amber. That's what it is. And biofuel got kind of caught on Anakoapono. What should we do in approving investments currently pending before regulators? And everybody knows that's Comcast, which is probably going to be ruled on very soon, and NextEra, which that'll be a year and a half before we hear about that one. But a lot of process in the meantime. So what do you think about regulation? You mentioned earlier that permitting delays create, additional prices, and we wind up paying for that. Can this be fixed by another approach to regulation, Christine?
No, that's a big question. And many elected officials have tried to cut the red tape. But I think it really calls for citizen involvement in making sure that as to what we want. Are we really serious about affordable housing? Are we really serious about building what we want for ourselves? Because they need to be more involved. There is a silent majority and a vocal minority. And right now, all of the agenda, or a lot of the agenda, is controlled by the vocal minority. And the silent majority, who really need affordable housing or their communities to be defined in the way that they'd like to see it, need to be involved. And the unfortunate part and the realism is that these people work, they're raising families, and it's very hard for them to come out and hear. So it's got to, my view is that, we have an electronic voting system. Maybe what we need to do is to have an expanded role where people can comment, not anonymously.
No,
but
because then you get irresponsible
you have
comments.
irresponsible comments. It's got to be where they can stand behind their name and comment on what they really need. I think it's time. We should have electronic voting and electronic comment system that allows for citizens who can't come out to be able to participate. And we need stronger leadership. And when I say stronger leadership, it's not about leadership that just says what should be done but can't get done. It's got to be stronger leadership where they can gather everyone and have a collective of political will to do the right thing, but not worry about the next election.
Right.
How do we do that?
How do we do that?
Yeah. And then that's something that everyone's been trying to solve for years. I wish it was on my watch.
You gave me an idea, though. I'd like to just give you my idea. Maybe it's worth something. You know, as you said this, you know, we have electronic feedback now. We have social media kind of feedback where everybody can vote. It changes the way democracy works, I mean, theoretically. So suppose I said, you know, how do you feel about Kaka'ako? Here's 10 questions. And you vote. And you give us your reasons to. Don't just give me a check off. I want to know why you feel that way. Okay, and I collate all of that, and I publish all of that, and I send all of that to my legislators and my leaders, and give them a, you know, a condensed version of it, an interpretation of it. And I broaden this till there are thousands of people involved. And if they answer once, they get credit. If they keep answering all the time, they get more credit. In fact, I give them more weight, okay, in the analysis of this whole voting process. And you know, we can have another kind of democracy that way. And I think if we go public about the way this is analyzed, it'll have some influence on elected officials. What do you think?
I think that's a good start. It's a good
Okay.
start.
All right. See, you
But,
heard it
you
right
know,
here on ThinkTech.
We also have to look at, you know, everyone's afraid about the constitutional amendments to our state constitution, in which, you know, agencies such as Land Use Commission was created. And I don't have any issues with the Land Use Commission, except Land Use Commission was created when our counties did not have infrastructure to understand their own planning processes. We were very nascent at that time, and so we thought the big brother, the state, should overlook at our planning policies. But we're beyond that. We need to recognize where we are as a state. All of our counties are very defined. They have their own zoning ordinances. They have their own planning processes, their own community input. I don't think we need a land use commission anymore. I think it served its purpose. But it's just me.
And again, people have to speak up. P.S. In May, ThinkTech is going to do a downtown forum on public spaces, because we don't think enough conversation is happening around public spaces. And it's exactly what you say. We want the people to speak about public spaces, because they define quality of life in a given urban setting. You know, watch out for May 21st.
Very good.
Okay, so now the third speaker is Carl Fooks. Carl Fooks is the Executive Director, CEO of the Hawaii Strategic Development Corporation, which is an agency attached, a state agency attached to DBED, and it's involved in making investments, I guess you could say, in certain kind of entrepreneurial companies, little investments. There's not a lot of money there, and it's not offshore investments, but he can speak to this. He has experience on Wall Street. So we're going to ask him about Act 221 Redux, I call it. Maybe we need that again.
I absolutely believe we need Act 221 again.
All right.
Our filming industry needs more Act 221 type of incentives. It did so much to create new jobs, you know, and a diversified economy, but we weren't committed long enough. We quit before it could really take off.
And we lost the attention of that whole generation
Absolutely.
that came back from Silicon Valley. They presented themselves.
Absolutely. All these young people, bright ideas, they needed the funding. It's so hard to raise money, and Act 221 did it for them, and now we've lost it. Before they could even get their foothold, it takes decades, you know? Silicon Valley wasn't created overnight. It took decades.
Yes.
So we really needed that, and I feel very sad that it you know, it's no longer there. I hope we can see that again.
Yeah, we're in the same place on that, Christine.
Yeah.
Okay, so we want to know if we're getting sufficient capital incentives for local entrepreneurs. Are we getting enough from Silicon Valley and Wall Street? Answer no, I can tell you. What can we do to fill in the gap with tax credits, incentives for tech? How are our goals changed over recent years? You know, the definition of tech has morphed into the maker economy and the innovation economy and the co-working economy and all that. How has it changed? Are we moving fast enough to keep up with those goals and the needs of our economy, because our economy has needs, and our unfunded liabilities? We did a program on that just in February, and that was really important to find, including from Calvert Young, who the former budget and finance director under Abercrombie, a really sharp guy, that there are like $40 billion worth of unfunded liabilities that we're going to have to cope with. Where's that going to come from? We need a more robust economy to pay that off. So we
and
absolutely.
therefore offshore investment is needed.
Exactly.
Because we can't fund it. The money has to come from elsewhere to help us grow our economy. We can't do it on our own. We're not a manufacturing economy, unfortunately.
Right.
Had Act 221 taken off and allowed the nascent industry to grow into another decade, I think we might have had a chance. Yeah. Had our super ferry allowed for inner island, telecommuting as well as inner island way of transportation, that may have helped even more. Yeah. But we've lost it all.
You seem to say that we can't get it back. Can we get it back, Christine?
After $1 billion fiasco, who would come back and reinvest in the ferry?
Well, that's one of the questions in this panel.
Unless the government is going to run it.
You know, we alienated a lot of people on Wall Street. They think
Absolutely.
we're the banana republic out here now.
We really do. In fact, my offshore investments call our investment portfolio, believe it or not, outside of the States. It's
Right.
foreign investments.
Right.
We fall under foreign investments as Hawaii,
Yeah.
not just because of the distance, it's just the way we do our business
Yeah,
here. And
yeah.
the regulations, you keep talking about regulations. The amount of regulations that we have is so unprecedented between all the states in the United States. We're considered foreign investment.
That's really scary, because it means we're the last on the list. We're not to be trusted. It's the, what do you call it, the Republic of Hawaii?
Banana Republic. But you know, I'm of this state. I'm a citizen of Hawaii. I love this state, and I try to make sure that people understand how special this place is. And so, I've been successful in raising money outside of the state, and I hope that others will agree with me. You know, those who are investing with me will agree with me about how to go about it within this community, because I do want it to be a good community.
A moment about you, just a moment about you. You're a developer.
I'm a developer.
You're a developer. I mean, a developer. I mean, we need, young people. I see you as very young, Christine. We need young people to go into risk areas like this and not be worried about it. We need, people to take risks and build things and be progressive and shout out for progress. And you're doing that. Good for you. We want more like you, many, many more.
Thank you.
What are you doing to create more?
Always looking for new opportunities.
Yeah.
And also being vested in our community. I'm a developer, but really I'm of the community, so I participate in things outside of the community. Blue Planet Foundation, for example, looking at the energy and making sure that we're sustainable 20, 30 years from now when my son grows up, and I hope he can live here and afford to live here. I'd like to make sure that he lives in an environment that's going to be pono.
Yeah, and you'll train him to do the same thing after you. Why, though? Why did you get into this? I mean, you could have done anything. Why this?
Why real estate?
Why development?
Why real estate development? Well, I was one of those lucky people that fell into the job when I was going to school and needed a part-time job, and realized that real estate development creates communities and has an impact. And why not a local person?
Sure.
Who understands us, why not us? I'm an independent developer, not hired by mainland companies. I work with mainland companies, but I'm independent, and therefore I have a voice at the table.
I actually don't know anybody like you, Christine. Is there anybody like you?
Well, Bert Kobayashi and his team, they're local, independent, raising, hundreds of millions of dollars, much greater than I, local developers. Yeah. And when you look at any campaign for capital campaigns for nonprofits, any nonprofit, you'll see the Kobayashi name. And I'm so proud to know them. I think we need more civic citizens like them.
When we come back from this next break, we're going to talk about corporate citizenship, especially by offshore investment corporations. Okay, that's Christine Camp of Avalon Group, a development firm here in Hawaii. We're here on Community Matters. I'm Jay Fidel. We're talking about offshore investments in Hawaii, which is the title of our downtown forum next Thursday, April 16th. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia. And by Asia, we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world, and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Okay, we're back, we're live, we're here with Christine Camp of Avalon Group, a local developer. And we started talking before the break about corporate citizens, which I'm hoping, thinking maybe that you'll talk about that at the program next week. What about corporate citizens? You know, community engagement is so critical. You talked about why you like Hawaii, and I'll bet part of it is the community, the way people engage together. You can love them. You can love the kids. You can love the people. You know, there is plenty of aloha spirit left, but we just have to nurture it, and we have to make it happen. And one of the ways we make it happen, okay, is we have good corporate citizens who don't take advantage of us, who share the same ethic. But tell me your thoughts.
So when it comes to offshore investments, that means majority of the purse strings are controlled elsewhere, or the profits from the the activities are going elsewhere. So these people, they're not monsters. They have their own civic engagement, but in communities where they live. And so what's left is really the small part of the local partners like myself who are trying to be out there and helping out the community where they need it. What's very disappointing sometimes is when you look at very large companies that are they have their platforms here in by way of hotels or by maybe like a Target or Walmart. They have their own nationwide programs. So the baseball team that made it to the playoffs and need to go and fly out to the mainland and trying to raise money, they're not going to have an open reception at these national platform companies, which is very sad. They're going to come to smaller companies like myself or other small companies who are being asked over and over and over again. And if these bigger companies could just put up a program for the local communities and recognize the local communities, that would be very helpful. I mean, I know they're very engaged in like Ronald McDonald House or the juvenile diabetes and all those things that has a national platform, but not for that elementary school or that baseball team or the high school that's doing a carnival or things of that sort. Football players that need gears. It's not available.
Yeah, but it is important because it feeds into that same sort of community thing that we like so much. And the question is, when they come in here and put their bucks down, and the big box stores are probably an example, some of the REITs that have come here and bought large tracts of land, and all they want to do is see a better spreadsheet,
right,
and not necessarily a better community, and then spirit the profits away, and all we get is minimum wage jobs out of it, if that, and higher rents, that's for sure. How do you change that? How do you get in somebody's face, legally or, socially?
Well, they tried,
Yeah.
right. Our red legislators tried to pass laws which were challenged at the Supreme Court, and they lost.
I know about that.
Yes. So I mean, the small businesses fought against the REIT,
Yeah.
and it didn't happen.
Yeah.
I don't think that we want to be, because those are contractual relationships, so they were not constitutional issues, and so I don't know if we want to be legislating against that because we're hurting ourselves, we're shooting us in the foot.
Yeah, we don't look good in the process.
I think what we need to do is to encourage them more.
How? Tax incentives?
Perhaps.
If they're paying income tax, for example, we can give some sort of tax incentive or deduction or credit for participation in local community events.
Non-national based community
Yes, make
events.
a distinction.
Because, for example, Child and Family Services, one of the largest, and broadest reaching nonprofit in the state. They're not based or aligned to any national. They don't have the benefit of these big boxes participating with them.
Right.
And so if there was some kind of a tax benefit for these people to say, maybe the government can match or give them a 10% break on something or what have you, maybe it might be helpful because then those are huge dollars coming back to us in our community.
Yeah.
And our community can benefit from that.
And maybe it's social media too, to jump to the tech electronic side of things. if I know that store number X is not participating in local activities, but store Y is, then if people tell me that, if social media tells me that, maybe I'm more likely to go there, to store Y.
Let's hope.
Yeah,
Let's
right.
hope.
Well, at the end of the day, price is going to determine
It's
the
the
price
price.
in the stores.
Right.
And people ultimately,
I mean, I go to Costco and I'm shopping for my eggs, and I see all of my friends, they're buying at Costco, and I feel a little bad for Foodland or Times, but they're hanging in there because they're creating a niche for themselves with the higher end, the gourmet things that might be not readily available in Costco, so they're competing.
we can
But
learn from
Foodland and does an amazing job of participating. City Mill, you look at any nonprofit, and City Mill has touched them in one way or another.
Yeah.
Locally owned companies competing with big boxes,
Yeah.
and they're taking in a huge burden of supporting the community. Why can't we have the others do that as
Yeah.
well?
We can do that. And it doesn't have to be,
It doesn't have to be regulation, though.
constitutional.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be regulation, but maybe it is a tax break. Maybe it's some sort of an incentive.
So I'm glad you're going to talk about that, because I think that if we don't do this, if we don't have some way to countervail the buying power, countervail the community giving, we're going to get a result we won't like. I mean, and over time, if we don't do anything about it, we're going to get a result that we really hate. I mean, that's like it's out of the Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. It's the story of Christmas future. Better mend our ways.
I think that might be a thought that we can build upon.
Yeah. Okay. Now we have other speakers too. Just touching on them. We have a few minutes left here. We have Chinese investments with Brenda Foster. This is all very mysterious, but there's a lot of Chinese money coming in. Sometimes I understand, maybe you know more about this, that this money comes in under numbered corporations that we don't necessarily know who owns those corporations, that are buying properties that are high-end, I guess, and maybe businesses too that have immigration, status benefits attached. What do you know about this?
So absolutely. So there's two parts of what I see Chinese or even Korean investors. We've seen a big wave of Chinese investors and Korean investors coming in to follow the Japanese. The Japanese are still the biggest investors in the state.
Is that right? Okay.
But Chinese, we're seeing that, but they're disparate in the sense that one is coming directly from China, maybe they're coming from Hong Kong. A lot of it's coming from Canada and mainland U.S., but they're based on Chinese money. What's happening is that they're coming in two steps. They have created these entities. Canada had a great EB5, similar type of an EB5 program that said you invest a certain amount. I think in America it's $1 million or $500,000 in rural areas, and then you get a green card for you and your whole family. But in Canada, it was $150,000. I think they just raised it to $250,000. And so they had a slew of Chinese investors coming in, the wealthy ones with a lot of money, coming up to make sure that, not that they want to live in Canada, and not that they want to live here, but they want to send their kids to school here and then have options if something happens in their political economy.
Insurance,
Right, it's insurance. And Koreans, it's the same thing. But you can't buy a condo. You have to buy a business for EB5.
Right.
You have to create jobs.
Create jobs. Yeah.
But I think Canada and Australia and places like that have very liberal policies where you don't even have to create jobs. Whereas here in America, you have to create 10 jobs and all these different things. But yes, so they are coming in. They're either buying small businesses or investing in businesses or investing in development projects where they can buy a unit as part of creating the job, the construction jobs. So that's happened. But what's happened in the last couple of years is that Chinese has been cracking down on these people who are buying luxury goods, luxury condos, and they're taxing them and fining them. And Korea has just started to do that in July of last year, made it in the public news. Apparently, they went after a whole bunch of CEOs and people who have been buying huge luxury homes, a lot of it in Hawaii, and they were fined and taxed. And
This
so
discourages other people.
So that story has discouraged them. So what they're doing now is creating state LLCs to buy entities, from what I hear anyway. So it is two-step. They're not buying. You don't know if they're Korean or Chinese because they're coming from the States, but they're LLCs buying entities.
Interesting. One point I want to pick up on, though, is this, is that if you have money that's coming by way of a facilitator, say, in Canada or the mainland, it's because the facilitator is offering the facilitator has greater leverage to raise that money, say, in China. But we could do that. Aside from immigration, national immigration issues, can't we become the aggregators right here?
We
and
have
do what
tried. We failed.
Why?
For whatever reason, I think it was back in the 90s, early 90s that they started. And we had, and I think DBED still may have it, I'm not sure, but we were called a regional super center that was going to aggregate all these investments. But it never materialized for whatever reason, and I just, maybe Brenda might be able to talk about that.
Yeah, yeah.
More about that from Brenda.
Who knows? Yeah, maybe we can. I got to make a note of that. Okay, we have a couple that we haven't talked about. Just to mention them very briefly. We have Mike Fergus, and I called his remarks the worst case analysis. This is when, for example, a large coupon clip investment group comes from the mainland, and we know, I think you mentioned in passing, that kind of investment here, and they have no interest in community whatsoever, and all they want to do is raise rents and not provide jobs, just raise rent, especially in real estate. And he's going to talk about that. That'll be interesting to see what, if anything, we can do about that. And there's a bill pending which he can talk about in the legislature. I don't know its present situation, but this bill would tax income from REITs, which is normally passed through. So
yeah, so
that's a long shot.
That's a slippery slope there. When news goes out, Hawaii is the only state in the nation that taxes REITs. How does that
Not too
bode
well.
No,
for REITs.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah. So how do you get them under control? How do you manage them? How do you, I guess you answered this before, and that is you jawbone them, you talk to them, you try to get them to play ball on the thought that they'll be better liked and they'll do better here if they're better liked. Is that what it is?
Absolutely.
Okay. And we have one more that I should mention. We've covered 6 already. The 7th one is John Wallenstrom of Forest City, Hawaii. I don't know if he's a builder, isn't he?
Forestry is a developer and builder. They started out as military housing contractors here, but they're big. They're out of the mainland, and they develop retail centers, military housing, and homes.
I found them to be pretty clever and nimble. I mean, they've also developed energy on some big projects in solar and I think wind also. So you really got to give them credit for moving where the market is. So I called my suggestion for his remarks, how can we break the doldrums? Why is it that we have so many, you and I have covered this, so many stalled private and public projects? Does the public understand? Is this becoming the state that says no? Do we have to change our way of processing permits and dealing with opposition? How can we better deal with offshore investors like Wall Street? Or for that matter, with local investors, large organizations like Kamehameha Schools and the ERS? Should the government spend and invest more to stimulate the economy? What is the proper role for state-backed bonds? About local banks? What can we do to accelerate astronomy on Laniakea? Inter-island transportation like Superferry? Agritech, science, filmmaking and manufacturing? Housing, affordable housing, rail and other transportation infrastructure, tourism, recreation, and hospitality. I guess I would lump all of those into projects and initiatives that could have moved better and that are being held back in some way. So this little program we're doing really is to try to open the opportunities, make them work, get the investment, get them going. Do you think it'll help? I
do. I also think that the state should allow for ease of funding infrastructure. There's a law in the state that says community facility district financing. But in every other community on the mainland, the way it's done is that you float the bond backed by the state or the counties, but it's for a given district. Like say Waiava, they need to build a bridge, they need to do interchange, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. And what they do is say, okay, only those people who are benefiting from here will pay for that over a 30-year period. It'll be for bondholders outside of the state, whoever wants to buy the bond, because it's backed by the county or the state. And so it should be paid for. Sounds great, except the law says you get reimbursed. In other words, you have to pay for the whole thing before you get the bond is issued. Nobody in their right mind is going to spend all this money in hopes that the legislature will approve a bill that allows you to get reimbursed after all the money has been spent. It would be better if they can borrow the money from the bondholders and use the money to build it, then have everybody else pay back the bondholders over a 30-year period. But that reimbursement provision has stopped a lot of infrastructure from using that law that's out there, dusty. No one has used it.
Definitely, we should discuss this. I hope you put it down in your notes. No kidding, definitely. And this is a source of money, local source of money, a great source of money.
Well, it could be a source of money from bondholders from New York, for
Could be
example, or
anybody, right.
anybody in the United States. They buy the bond, Hawaii state bond, or the county bond, municipal bonds that are bought by banks, other
Tax
places.
benefits and all that. Christine Camp, Avalon Group, one of our speakers in offshore investment in Hawaii on April 16th at Laniakea. Sign up. ThinkTechHawaii.com here on Community Matters. Thank you so much, Christine.
You're welcome.
Aloha.
It's fun.